Yo, yo, yo! Welcome back to Daily Dean on the Move. What? So, once again, I'm in the car. Mostly because this is probably not going to be an hour again. But, basically, we are in large part products of our environment. And, you can't separate where someone grew up, how they grew up, what they were surrounded by, as much as you can separate, their own genetics. The same way, like, we ask nature versus nurture. What is the effect of someone's genetics versus what they're surrounded by? They go hand in hand. They coincide with one another, and having one naturally means that it's going to interact with the other, right? In the case of nature versus nurture, your genetics will interact with your environment and who you're surrounded with and whatnot. And we can all agree on that, right? Like, for example, someone can be born a psychopath, right? And I think, you can be born a psychopath, an inability to feel empathy for other people, but how that interacts with other people will shape how you then, grow up as to be an adult. Because, not all psychopaths are going to be becoming murderers, but they can become cutthroat capitalists and can, not empathize with other people in business or, on the streets or, in their relationships and whatever. So, this also leads into nobody is born a racist, right? People are born children and have no concept of, treating other people differently based off the color of their skin. In the same way that, I guess I don't have an example there, but, children are taught to be racists. So, there's a little bit more nuance to just, punching someone who's racist, because, like, if you were an edgy alt-right teenager and you thought it was funny to call black people monkeys, then, that's despicable. That action is reprehensible, but that doesn't mean that, you have to find, where did that come from? Did they find that online? Did they adopt that idea, that personality from people around them? Because a teenager wasn't born an alt-right, edgy, racist teenager, right? People become that. So, where do they get that? And are they should be held accountable for those actions and for what they say, but they shouldn't be, reprimanded if they found it online and are now adopting it because they don't know any better, right? So, we should be teaching people that, their environment and what people are surrounded by is important, because this can also, lead into the cycle of abuse that generations suffer from. If this is, anecdotal, I don't have any research papers to cite, but it kind of makes sense. If somebody has something else to counter this point with, I'm glad to hear it. If, we lived in the 1950s and 1960s, it was normalized to be subjugated by your boss. And if the working person who provided for someone's family was a man, then, a man in a heteronormative family, then, they would be subjugated by their boss and then find it normalized to subjugate their family to them. So imagine you're being abused by your boss. You're a man providing for your family in the 1950s and 1960s, and your boss is always on your case, always telling you what to do, always, reprimanding you, abusing you verbally, emotionally, whatever. You're gonna find it normalized to then do that to your own family, to do that to your children, to do that to your spouse, to do that to the people around you, because if your boss does it, then you can project it and see it's okay to do it onto, other people. So, if you are abused, you will then abuse the people around you. Well, it's likely that you will abuse the people around you. So, if your child is then abused, once again, growing up in the 1960s around a family with an abuser, then you're going to find it normalized to then abuse your own children. And so, notice now you have a feedback loop of people who see that it's normalized to be verbally abusive or, to dehumanize your children and dehumanize the people around you. So, in that case, you can't blame, you can blame someone for their actions. They did choose to do those things, but you can't blame them for being the source of their actions. So once again, there's nuance to how you approach abusers and how you approach racists. Because, again, they became that. they didn't, it's possible they didn't choose to be that way. And that doesn't mean that I'm defending abusers or racists, just that the way we approach them and the way you treat them can be influenced or should be treated with, not respect, but once again, nuance. Again, they didn't choose to be that way. There should be some empathy there should be some empathy in how you treat abusers, but also, this is probably the most important case, victims. If you are a victim of abuse, this does not mean your abuser is justified in abusing you. In the same way, I keep using in the same way, but in the same way that, in the case of a racist teenager calling all black people monkeys, you don't turn your other cheek to, a teenager saying that because, oh, well, they're just like that, they'll grow out of it. No, you tell them off. You tell them, hey, that's disrespectful. So why don't you, not do that? So in that case, obviously you don't ignore their behavior because they didn't choose to do it. They didn't choose to become that, but you tell them off. You tell them that's not cool and whatnot. So nuance and stuff in regards to how we treat others. Now, I think the last video I did, the hot takes on r/conservatives Discord, I mentioned how, one person gave this take, strong families raise strong people. And in relation to what I just said about environments influencing how you're, influencing how someone grows up, in that case, they go hand in hand. But the example that I used was that someone who is prone to developing a disorder, or behaving in a certain way because of a personality disorder, for example, it can be deterred by positive influences in their life. Because, the most common, in terms of developing mental disorders, it is far more likely that if you are poor and you are impoverished, you're more likely to develop depression or bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or whatever. And people theorize that this is because of stressors in your life that make it harder for your body to keep up with your mental health, that causes you to be more likely to develop something you're already prone to. This isn't to say that being poor makes you crazy, but being poor can aggravate things that are underlying in your own body and your genetics that then, trigger, and you now develop a disorder that needs treatment and medication and therapy and whatnot. So, in that case, your environment, your poverty, and what you need and how you sustain yourself does relate to, or it does influence how you what you become. So, in that regard, people who are mentally ill and have disorders should be treated with the same kind of nuance that we treat people with, people who are racist. Now, people who are mentally ill don't have a choice in the disorders they develop. It's mostly genetic. For example, schizophrenia is mostly genetic. You can find that, there's that's besides the point. There are certain things that you can't control, mental disorders especially, that make it important to, realize that when you're talking to these people about what they've experienced or how you can help them or what you can do. So medication and therapy is pretty important, and that can counteract a lot of your environment. So I feel like this is everything I wanted to talk about. So I hope you have a wonderful week, and goodbye.